Right, it's 8:30. You ready? Yep. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Te Puna Kōrero meeting of the 7th of September. I will open the meeting. Can I ask Taku Parai for the karakia, please? Thank you very much. Let's move to apologies. We have an apology from Councillor Ford. Councillor Trillin was meant to be, he's still not in. So we'll also put a placeholder apology for Councillor Trillin if he doesn't manage to get in. I'll move the apology. Seconded by Councillor Hayward. All those in favour? Q carried. Public forum. We had Mr. Graham Johns. Is he available? Josh, welcome.
Morning.
So Mr. Johns is not at the meeting, so we will now move on to item number 3, which is conflict of interest declarations. Are there any declarations to be made? Yes, Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora, hia mana. With regards to item 7.1 exclusively, due to my employment with the Problem Gambling Foundation, I will note a conflict of interest and to propose that for the purposes of that item, I will be withdrawing from the room.
Noted. Thank you very much, Councillor Hayward. Are there any others with conflicts of interest? No, that's fine. Let's move on to notifications of extraordinary business, of which, as usual, there are none. And that moves us to item 6, confirmation of minutes of the 17th of August 2023. I'll move the minutes to put them on the table. Do I have a second, please? Councillor Trillin. Are there any items on the minutes, corrections that people wish to raise? If not, I'll put the motion that the minutes be received. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. So that moves us to item 7.1, which is the Gaming Machines Policy Review Statement of Proposal. Thank you, Councillor Hayward. See you soon. I'm going to move this report to open it for discussion. Do I have a seconder, please? Yeah, Councillor Waddle. I'll take the report as read. Are there any, just noting here that what we are doing is adopting the statement of proposal and agreeing that consultation, as noted in the paper, goes ahead. And it's when it comes back that we have an opportunity to discuss and note any feedback we get as a result of the consultation. If you have any questions, then officers are available to speak to that. So, Jade, you're here, and very good. Yes, Councillor Duncan. So, do you want to come up, Jade? And yeah. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, look, the first thing is a comment, and I'd remind people that the Problem Gambling Foundation raises all its funds through pokie machines, so that's a good starting point. My question is how confident are we in the numbers that are in this paper?
Which numbers specifically?
Well,
which one specifically?
Starting with page 18, there's a table on there, and again, it's published in the paper to go out for consultation on page 28. And I think there's about an $11,000 discrepancy in your total there. So that sort of calls into question your numbers.
Well, if we can just ask officers to check those numbers. Is that the sum you're talking about?
Yeah.
So are you talking about table 1 or table 2?
Table 1.
So table 2 is the total actual amount that we've received across every year, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, and then the total for all 4 of those years.
Is $11,000 out?
Okay, noted.
Thanks.
Okay, well, they'll check that.
I'll double
and we
check
can
that.
correct that if that's found to be true. I haven't done it in my head yet, but anyone got a calculator? Are there any other questions? Yes, Councillor Filu.
Just a simple question, hopefully it's on page 44. Can you tell me what the difference is between the gross proceeds, so that 40% gross proceeds, and the gaming machine profit? Or is there a difference?
So if anything that's relating to the GMP, so gaming machines profits, is pretty much the gross profit as well, I believe. So can you point out?
Yeah. Okay. I'll show you online. So it's got there that 40% of the gross proceeds need to be redistributed.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So the gross proceeds across pretty much all of the proceeds from poker machines, 40% of that in total across all of New Zealand, all of the national figures, needs to be returned back to the community. So the GMP figures, which is these figures in that table,
Yeah.
those are the gross machine profits per quarter, where the gross proceeds is the total amount every year that needs to be, and 40% of that needs to be returned. So it's inclusive of the tax. Well, when DIA came to explain the amount of money that they receive that goes back to each of the individual venues, that's the total amount that they were kind of talking about. Does that make sense?
The 40% is what
40%
goes
of
out to the venues.
all of the money that is received from gaming machines. So all of the coin, every dollar that goes into that, 40% of that needs to go back to the community.
So is that like, when you say that, that means going out to all those different trusts that
Yes,
you
correct.
displayed in the report?
Yes.
So, and of that 40%, is that tax? Is that the 33% that's taxed on that 40%?
I'll have to double check the DIA figures for an answer for that, so I can get back to you on that one. DIA did kind of break that down when they came and spoke to us, so I'll go back and double check everything that they've provided, and it's available on their website as well, so I'll give you...
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I was trying to remember, and Councillor Duncan and I were having a conversation, and I remembered her saying, like, of the dollar...
Yeah, so
Like
they
10
broke it
cents
down,
or
but I
something.
not off the top of my head, I don't have those figures for you, but I can find them for you, if that's what you're wanting to see. Yeah.
So just checking that it's not germane to what we're deciding today.
No, it's just questions from...
Just a question in
Yeah.
terms of technical detail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just trying
Thank
to-
you. Anyone else? Josh, sorry. I was looking before, didn't see the hand.
Thanks, Russ. Just a quick comment from me. I strongly support the recommended option here. I think the comprehensive sinking lid is a no-brainer. And when it comes to the ethical commitment, I understand why there might be some hesitancy from some councillors on that, just because of the potential cost attached to it. But I think the presentation that we had and the explanation that we received around the rationale for it was a very, very strong one. And just noting as well that the funding that does come from that is probably about as regressive a funding source as you could possibly look for. So yes, it might potentially create a little bit of a funding bridge that we need to get, but I think the way for that to be plugged isn't through the gambling revenues that it currently is. So I think that's definitely worth going out for consultation. Really keen to see what the community thinks, and just wanted to voice my support. Cheers.
Thanks, Councillor Trillin. Anyone else? Mayor Baker?
Thank you. Yep, I'm pleased this is actually going out. I still disagree that the council shouldn't take money, but I'll let the residents decide and see what happens there. So happy with balance.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. Anyone else? Councillor Johnson?
Yes, I'm in favour. I want to support the recommendation as well. I'm not really in favour of having a nanny state and ruling everything, but I think what really concerns me is the lack of improvement from the policy from 2019 and the people and groups that have come to advocate and explain what is the impacts in the community. So for that reason, that's why I'm supporting it. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I'll let you have one more, Councillor Duncan.
Look, there's all sorts. It's so flawed. This whole paper is badly flawed. What I want to know is, what do other councils around the area do? Because we're in danger of just pushing people out into other areas to do their gambling.
I understand where you're coming from. I think this is a discussion we had. What we're here to decide is whether the paper which we workshopped goes out to consultation. So the time for discussion around some of the points that have been raised already will be when it comes back and we see what the public has said, and then we can have our say and make a final decision. Okay? Is that all right? All right. So anyone else want to make a comment on any of that? All right, I'm now going to put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you. So this now brings us to item 7.2. Yeah, we need to get Jeff back. Yeah. Lynn, I think you should come up because we'll wait till Jeff comes back before it. Okay, Jeff, we're on to item 7.2, the project report. I'm going to move the report to open it for discussion. Do I have a seconder, please? Mayor Baker, thank you very much. What I'd like, I think we'll go through this, as we have done previously, one by one. But as we go through, Lynn, I wonder if there, and maybe it's not just you, maybe it's others as well, any updates to each one that, or maybe they'll come out in the questions, but if we can sort of deflect any questions first, if there are significant updates from when these have been written to now. I noticed there are probably a few things in there that might have updates that would be useful to us. All right, so let's move. I also note here that, and we'll get to this at the end, we have an outcomes review, or an initial one anyway, that was asked for by you, particularly Councillor Hayward. So thank you very much for that, officers, and we'll get to that. Let's start with the project reports, the link roads, Transmission Gully and the link roads. Does anyone have any questions to ask about this, the link roads? Who have we got here to? No? Very good. Let's move on.
Through the chair, just as an update.
Good, thank you, Andrew.
So the council has settled with Silverwood now. We've gone right through the process and we've finished with their costs. So the land acquisition is finalised. There's a wee comment there about Simpson Grierson tidying up a small matter. That's not problematic. We also have settled with CPB HEB, the builder, in terms of the bond. Because time has gone by, we've had to release the bond. But they have paid us about 1.3 million. Which the bond money was around about 800,000 or 900,000. So that money will be used for resealing because we're aware of some of the seal on the link roads is not as good as it should have been. So that side of it. There's also consents to be tidied up. And so CPB HEB are still doing some work on consents, and we're reliant on the regional council signing off on those matters. There's things like fish passages, there's things about planting, will the plants survive, and that is tied into the whole of Transmission Gully rather than just our link roads. So that may take a wee while to tidy up. But effectively, this would probably be the last report on the link roads, I think. Thank you.
Councillor Wehapi.
Sorry, I did have a question. Who's responsible at the moment for maintaining that link road, i.e. all the vegetation along the road?
The answer is we are now on the link roads. So we're the principal and our contractor has now been discharged. Oh, sorry, the builder has now been discharged. So that would go through to the likes of Downer as a contract agent to the council. And they may contract it to other sub-parties. You could even see our Parks Department in there.
Any other questions? I just have one question, Andrew, seeing as you raised it. That $1.3 million, that's not included in the financials?
No, not at the 30th of June. I think it's come in later. Yeah.
And we're going to use that for resealing the existing route?
Well, as I said, there's around about 800,000 was tagged to road failures and things like that, but there is more money in there from the consenting point of view, and what we've agreed with CBP HEB is if they carry on work and they can prove that they can get the consent signed off by the regional council, then we're happy to pay them back for that particular part of the work. So that the contractor's wanting to claw back 200,000 or 300,000 out of the money that they've paid us.
Okay.
They won't get any money back for the ceiling. That'll be done through us tendering for the ceiling.
Very good. As a final comment, I must say the financials don't look too bad compared to, in terms of percentage terms, and compared to some other projects. Right, let's move on to Eastern Porirua. I'll take it that we've read it. Are there any questions that people have from here? Yes, Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. He pātai. Just wanted to get an assurance from officers that the planting that's underway, I've seen the work that's been recently done down in Methven Place, which is fantastic and appears to be all native species. Can I get an assurance from officers that the commitment is to look at endemic and native species as part of the replanting? I would hate to think that we would just be planting in Norfolk pines or something like that.
Through the chair. We've got a good mix of natives in there. We're not planting, I don't believe, pine forest there.
Just a shout out for the kahikatea, which is a nice pine tree in itself. Anyway, that's my question. Thank you.
Councillor Hayward. Okay, anyone else? Right, let's move on to customer first, Kiritaki Tuatahi. You read that. Does anyone have any questions with regard to that project? Yes, Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, on page 69, under risks, it mentions significant legal issues. What would those be?
Through the chair. So we're looking at if there were issues with the implementation and we didn't meet our regulatory requirements, then we could have legal implications. But we will aim to do everything we can with the project not to get to that stage.
Sorry, just a supplementary to that. So it's our responsibility to ensure that we're meeting any statutory or legal requirements in the things that we do, not the deliverer of the technology. Is it sheeted home to us, not combined or whatever?
Perhaps through the chair I can attempt to answer that. So it will depend on, I guess, what the blockage is or what the barrier is. The concern that we have is if we miss a statutory deadline, for example, through a parking ticket going to the district court, those tools we then have to fine or charge don't take place. So it will depend on what happens, and there's a number of scenarios that would determine whether we were responsible or whether the system and Datacom's responsibility to deliver it is. So we're just mindful that there is a number of risks in that space, and we're trying to mitigate by being real aware of the key elements of each statutory process, be it resource consents, building consents, parking, dog control, which all have best practice that then means we can follow through. If we drop that best practice, we can't follow through, which means we can then be challenged by people who would love to get away with not paying fines and doing those sorts of things. So that's what it's about.
Thank you.
Can I just add, we are the principal here, so we are responsible for all our meeting our statutory guidelines. There is some potential in this that if we don't get the right performance out of Datacom, well, we may be sheeting that home to them, but that's what we're working to avoid. But it's the statutory responsibilities are on us. It's just that we push that risk onto others in a contract sense if their product doesn't deliver what they have committed to having it deliver.
Oh, thank you. I mean, you've got it covered, so
Yeah.
that's great. Was my question. Any other questions on this? Oh, Josh. Sorry. Councillor Trilling.
Thanks, Russ. Yeah, my question in relation to this as well, just looking also at page 69, so under the financials, it notes that the costs that are listed there do not include internal staff working on the project. And then under the corrective action, it notes that additional resource has been recruited for the project team. I was just wondering if we could have a little bit more elaboration around what that additional resource is and whether that is captured by the costs presented in the financials or whether that is internal staff resources.
Through the chair. So that resource is contractors that have been brought in with specialist skills as business analysts, test leads, the skills that we don't have in-house. So we do have staff, internal staff also working on the project team, but the costs that are there do reflect the contracted time.
So, sorry, apologies. There was a cutout for a second. I'm not sure if that was on my end or yours. Do you mind just repeating that last two sentences?
Sure. So there are internal staff costs, internal staff working on the project. Their costs are not included in the dollars here, but the contractors that have been brought in to work on the project, their costs are included.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the additional resource that's been recruited, could you give us an idea of the level of resource there, how significant it is?
There's a project manager, a project coordinator, a test lead, a couple of business analysts. So we do have, we have brought in contractors that have got specialist skills for the project to help us deliver it in a tight time frame.
Cool, thank you.
And it begs the question, was that anticipated when the project began, that we would be doing this? Given that, you know, the total project has increased in cost and it's now OPEX as well, but that's a different story.
Yeah, yes, we did. We always knew that we didn't have the skills in-house, so we knew we would have to, and we don't really want the skills, the development skills in-house long-term. So the contracting model, we always knew we'd have to do that. The project has gone longer, so we've had, we haven't, the regulatory module started later than we thought it would. So the project manager, for example, that cost has spread over a longer period of time, but we always knew we would need that.
Okay, thank you. So we now move on to district plan. Are there any questions on district plan? Take it as read. Thank you. Well, let's move on. Thank you for that report. Know your pipes. Thank you, Councillor Hayward. I knew there would be a question.
Kia ora no. So in the section talking about the enforcement letters, there's a quote that says, "The legal review has been completed." Just taking a portion of that section. I'd like to get some clarity around the phrase legal review. Would this not be something that would be done one-off and then we would not have to replicate it for the other letters, or am I getting this wrong?
Through the chair, generic. So this is the first time as a council we're in the business of going on to people's properties, instructing Wellington Water to go on and fix up leaking sewer pipes. So I think there might be, given this was written at the 30th of June, we're just about at the stage where a letter's going saying Wellington Water or their contractors will be on your property on this date to fix your pipes.
So in terms of cost recovery, do we have any mechanism by which, in addition to the cost of repairing the pipes that Wellington Water are going to do, around legal review and our own office time to prepare this material?
Not for preparing the material, but the billing of people for the work. I think we discussed that at the time when we workshopped it, that we'll be trying to recoup those costs.
But not for legal costs in terms of the legal review, that would be...
No. And when you say, I mean, I'm in the $4,000 or $5,000, that sort of cost, that's something we would just suck up in our overheads.
Okay. Last part, Ty. Just in the update around phase 1, contract has been engaged to CCTV 2 sections of wastewater mains, that section. Is this to diagnose new issues, or is it to confirm the repairs that have been done on those sections? Because it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a second paragraph there, which I don't know if that relates to the first directly.
Through the chair to looking at new issues, to find faults, not about the repair. So don't usually go down there with a CCTV camera after we've effected the repairs. It's taken for granted that they've done it properly. On the site, they can see what they're doing when they're there.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Councillor Johnson has a question.
Look, just briefly, we may have touched on this before, but I see there's 92 properties have been notified of a minor fault. Can you just give us an example of what that is? Because it feels like that's the cheaper time to get it fixed when it is minor rather than letting it get worse?
Around where a pipe comes off your roof, your guttering, and goes into your drain.
Yeah.
Over the years, you've done some landscaping around that area on the ground, and now it's easier, if it was raining heavily, for a whole lot of water to get in your drain. So what Wellington Water is saying is you want to try and keep water out of your drains. Perhaps if you put a concrete block to channel the water off into a different direction, that would be very helpful, and that might cost you, $30, $40 at Bunnings, or might have 10 if you popped along and did it yourself.
Yeah,
it's
gotcha.
that sort of.
Thank you.
And so it would be fair to say that of those 92 properties identified, because some of those problems can be quite significant when it rains, I would suspect that of the 92 will do nothing. Yeah. So is there there's no follow-up to that? We just say, look, you might fix a few things here and there.
Through the chair, correct. We're after the big stuff where we see sewerage, where we see proper faults. That's where we're concentrating.
Yep. Thank you. All right. Let's unless there are any other questions, can we move on to harbour and catchment? I mean, we seem to be making continued good progress. Yes, Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora no. Here Pātai, regarding regulatory enforcement section, can officers give some commentary around how we interact with central government, particularly the Environmental Protection Agency, who have an enforcement role with regards to, amongst many things, sedimentation from earthworks and other such things? How do we engage with them?
Through the chair, at an officer level, we sit down and have a coffee with them. So a compliance manager has visited here in Porirua with myself, and I took along Richard from consenting and Nigel from the harbour side, and we sat there and talked about the resources we had at Porirua and what Nigel and his team was doing, but what Richard was doing with his people on the consenting side too. So the EPA was asking questions like, would it be helpful if we supplied some additional resource? And we were told that we're generally stepped up quite well in Porirua at the moment, visiting building sites, seeing what was going on with sedimentation, and had taken a prosecution recently. The EPA was then going to engage with Wellington Regional Council about their responsibilities, whether they were looking into forestry slash and things like that, what was going on. But generally, supply of information, anything that they wanted from us, we were happy to meet with them and supply. So it was that sort of level. They are interested in having a look and making sure that everyone is compliant. So that would be from our own contractors building the large CBD wastewater tank, for example. We have to be very careful about that. And you'll see when you get to the paper, there's commentary about working during winter, which is all about trying to keep sediment out of creeks and things like that, through to private parties and then Greater Wellington. My general takeout was that we put up quite a good amount of evidence that Porirua City Council was doing what it should be doing and was moving in the right direction. So as a council, I didn't see any action coming towards us from the EPA.
Yep, you can have a sup. Nick wants to make a comment as well. I don't know whether that will help with the...
I will just add from Andrew from the regulatory perspective. So the EPA we are working closely with, and they are actually undertaking a piece of work for us on Flighties Road. So we've looked at our program and said actually this is quite a significant sedimentation issue of which the EPA is picking up and the role that they've got where we've requested to do that. So we have got that relationship with them as well. We are really aware of the sedimentation issue in the Northern Growth Area in particular, and we have got a team of staff working together around how we can front foot that issue before more development starts there. So we will bring you in a workshop some developments that we're putting together about how to get ahead of that through a communications, education, building trust and potentially community monitoring type options. So we want to bring that to you. So I guess what I'm saying is we are thinking about sedimentation in terms of learning from Transmission Gully. It's actually the regional council that we need to improve our relationship with and get more capacity from with regards to sedimentation. So just from a regulatory perspective, that's where we're at with the sedimentation, focused, I guess, quite a lot on northern growth. In proactive tense, we're reacting to Transmission Gully's repercussions.
Is that second question now? Okay.
So, following on from the fulsome responses from officers, thank you for that. Is there any commentary from officers about the potential of regulatory overlap when it comes to investigation and potential prosecution of individual actors that aren't council directly?
No.
So I can answer that from a whole of city, if Andrew wants to, from a Transmission Gully. So whenever we have a prosecution, we are always working with the regional council on what role they have and what role we have. So we've had a site out at Judgeford, for example, where we have prosecuted and we've been successful in that prosecution. We worked with Greater Wellington on that. So with every case, depending on whether it's on reserve land, what the extent of the breach has been, we work with the regional council to either go in joint or one of the agencies takes a lead. It's just so happened that the prosecutions we've picked up, there's another one on Mana View with cutting down trees. It's been led by us and we don't need the regional council. So we do collaborate when it comes to prosecutions on which agency and whether we can provide each other with the right evidence that we need for that particular prosecution.
That
I did through the chair, comment when we did the link roads. There's a section in there about abatement notice from the regional council, and that is about needing to supply information which our contractor has supplied, and then the time it's taken for the regional council to review that information and ask supplementary questions which the contractor has to supply. So we're in that process and we're getting closer and closer and closer. And if you took a practical example like a fish passage, it's been designed a certain way and the regional council saying, well, we don't think the fish can actually travel along that passage, so you have to, what do? We've got 3 fish passages. I think the full Transmission Gully might have another 30 fish passages, so it's about getting the design right and that sort of stuff. So I think we might be over that one, hopefully, and then as we carry on. I can't, if they prosecute us, they prosecute us, but we're trying to supply all the information. And I use the other example, revegetation plans, are the plants going to die or not? So you make your own view as you drive along, looking at the quality of the plants and the weather that's going on at the moment. And if some of them aren't as healthy as they should be, we've got a parks department, which Roading will have to use some of that money with parks to revegetate the ones that haven't survived.
My question, I suppose, I wanted to hear the whole thing, just it may have answered it, but it was actually around the potential regulatory overlap between EPA and local, particularly our city. So do we have any issues around regulatory overlap that we need to be mindful of with regards to any investigation that EPA conducts?
In short, no, Jeff.
Right.
We have a good understanding of the EPA's roles and responsibilities and ours, and if there is a touch point, we're working closely with them to resolve that. But to be honest, the short answer is no.
Councillor Duncan and then Councillor Tron.
Mine relates to riparian planting. The deed of funding requires an independent audit of accounts. Is that paid for out of MFE funding? Yeah.
So page 73, is that?
Yeah, riparian planting.
Independent audit by the...
Yes, I mean, like council 50% of the money, MFE 50% of the money. To pick up the MFE money, part of the deal is you've got to have the audit. Audit's occurred, Nigel's done it, Nigel pulls his hair out with that sort of stuff. There is a lot of reporting that has to happen, but the modus operandi of the council is we do whatever's required to maintain that funding, and we're on top of our game. Thank you.
These are the hooks in government funding, Mike, you know that. Councillor Trillen.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I had a question in relation also to the riparian planting as well. And first of all, just to note, really good to see the amount of planting that's happened so far and that all the sites the current season have been identified. My question is around the long-term site identification and the balance of planting between public land and private land. And I was wondering if an officer could just speak to how much roughly in terms of the long-term planting locations that have been identified, how much of that is private land? And of the, I think it says 36 landowner agreements that have been agreed to so far, as a proportion, roughly, I guess, how far along has that work progressed? And further to that, as part of it, are we confident in the long term around securing enough landowner agreements for planting on private land to meet our long-term planting targets?
Through the chair, I'll have to come back with an answer to that question through Nigel, which we can circulate to all elected members. To date, there's a sort of a phrase that we've gone after low-hanging fruit, the stuff that we can actually get some runs on the board. And in terms of, if you apply that methodology to landowners, we've done really well with a number of landowners who have been very enthusiastic. As we carry on into the future, whether that's the case or not, I'm not too sure, but there are certainly plans in place. And in terms of, if you think back a couple of years ago, Porirua City Council won a Local Government New Zealand award for its planning of the riparian planting, the mapping, the methodology, etc. And while you can always tweak that, as we would to work in with the regional council, part of that methodology is to work with private landowners. So I think I'll just come back with the specifics to your question through perhaps Wendy's updates.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's no problem. And I guess just further to that, I think the approach we've taken so far is absolutely the right one, going for the low-hanging fruit, getting runs on the board, making sure that we're building up the momentum. So really happy to see that. And yeah, I guess I'm just looking for some assurance that we're going to see that continued into the future as we get through some of the low-hanging fruit. But that sounds like a good approach. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah. Any other questions, Councillor Duncan?
Just a follow-up to that, do those areas then become SNAs?
I can answer that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Through the
go,
chair, no, they don't. In short, in 30 years' time, 40 years' time, if they're really big, then maybe they would be up for consideration, but certainly in the first instance, no. It's a different process.
Good question. Let's move on to the next one, which is the Altair Lagoon Duck Pond infill. Does anyone have any questions? Thank goodness that project is just about finished. Moving right along. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Mayor Baker.
That's all right. Sorry, I could put it in this one rather than the other one. It says we're having the lawn and everything put down. Are we then going to come and rip the lawn up for the pump track? Because it says in the project thing 3 or 4 down that then we're going to remove the lawn for the pump track. So why would we put the lawn down to start with?
Yes.
Through the Chair, we haven't done much in terms of the lawning, so that there's a balance there. We didn't push the contractor too hard when we realised we were getting the $120,000 pump track, which is going there. So what we got in place will service until hopefully in November that pump track will arrive and it'll be established by December and up and operating for the Christmas period. Just bear in mind, the council had allocated through the LTP $500,000 a year for the development of Aotea Lagoon, and the duck fill of the infill of the duck pond is separate to that 500. We carried forward 500 from last year, and we've got 500 this year. So there's $1 million for development of Aotea, and there's some planning going on at the moment about what does that actually mean with the plan that was done with lots of public input and iwi input, etc. Let's get started. So you'll see some more development around that area, hopefully not too far away.
And I also note, Andrew, that the lawn is not finished yet anyway. So it's still got to be completed by the contractor. Sorry? What? I didn't hear. Anyway, long-term plan. Does anyone have it? Sorry? Oh, did I? I must have whipped over it. Oh, yes, I did. Sorry. Central City Wastewater Storage. Councillor Duncan, you mentioned the snails. Oh, sorry.
No, I just noticed in the risks, the overflow consent application, what if it doesn't come through? What if we don't get consent? What then?
I mean, I can't prejudge things like that, but just reminding you that we're heading in the right direction with an $85 million project, which takes care of, we said, 8 out of 10 overflows a year. There'll always be the big ones where there will be some sort of overflowing. There is a general discussion going on about in Porirua with the whole network. Given these big events, there are manholes which overflow all over the place, and what's the cost of fixing that? It's astronomical, and it will be a problem for entity G moving forward. So within that sort of view is a common sense approach where you come to consenting, and the people who sign off on the consent can actually see the money and the investment that you're putting in place.
Let's hope that is so. I agree. Councillor Philo.
Yeah, I just wanted, around the risks, the issue of the overflow consent. So what kind of, can you kind of paint more of a picture of what that means in terms of the existing, especially the last part, and if a tank overflow outfall to the Porirua Harbour couldn't be consented? Just a bit more. You've just spoken about it, but if you could just sort of explain it a bit more.
I'm not sure what more I can say. I mean, we're building the tank. If you think about what's happening at the moment, every time it rains seriously, there can be overflows into the Stram and the harbour. And we're making a substantial investment to try and stop that. But I guess the question would be, to do it 10 out of 10, what do you have to do? And you get this thing called economies of scale or benefits that perhaps the cost, it's not an extra 10 million, it's not an extra 20 million, it might be an extra 100 million. So within a consenting environment, when you're trying to fix that, I don't see the consent people actually going, no, you can't have a consent because the overflow is going to happen. It might be more about terms and conditions, and you might have to do this or that or something, or put a bund up or whatever. So it's that sort of conversations that go on. But if you think of the area where we were talking, it's in between State Highway 1 and the stream. You've got a wetland, you've got a bit of a reserve, and those are the areas that at the bottom, the water comes down through Bothamley Park from the hill. Those are the areas that sort of overflow at the moment. So we're eliminating plenty of overflow areas with the Bothamley Park sewer that Tiaranga are currently building, and Champion Street's closed. So lots of it is being eliminated. It's just when you get really big events, you're always going to have an overflow until somebody comes up with a solution, or there's more technology or something in the future.
Okay.
And I think, we recognise this as part of our strategy when it was discussed originally, and there will be other holding tanks in the network as well, which should help to alleviate those problems. It was never envisaged that we would eliminate 100% of overflows. So, this is just a matter of, consenting reality, basically. So,
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora no. Same theme. I think the last answer answers most of the questions that I had in relation to that, so thank you. But can I just confirm, when the network overflow consent was lodged, in there was information about the wastewater tank that was set to be constructed and the likelihood that may cause an overflow event at that location? Because obviously you'd build a piece of infrastructure that would be able to control the point of failure as part of any prudent design.
Without looking at the detail, it should have, because Greater Wellington Regional Council's received both consents for the holding tank plus the network as well. So that it's the same group of people, and people writing the consents are interconnected, so they'll be talking about both.
But there's no expectation that they may have not have taken that into account with regards to the network overflow consent.
I'm sure, in terms of putting your best foot forward as an applicant, you would have put your best foot forward and said, we're spending a large amount of money here, or Porirua's decided to do this, so that will be beneficial. So,
just comment briefly on this. I think just the explanation in the documentation probably would have been more useful to give a bit more expansion around the nature of the risk itself, because I do take on board the point that Andrew made, that it's not likely that they're going to decline the application, but they may add in additional conditions which may have a fiscal impact to the council. They will have to be in terms of additional infrastructure or improvements to design time. I'm trying to make sure that as a council reading this, that I apportion the correct level of risk in terms of this being placed on the table.
Right. All right. Taku.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate and support Councillor Hayward's remarks in regards to mitigating any overflow, because I haven't heard any conversation that we can't stop it all, that we can't hold it all back. When we sort of agreed to that tank going in there, we thought it was going to mitigate a lot. And that we went there to do the karakia, getting some assurance from the engineers that we're on the morning talking it up. Oh no, this is going to capture it all, Tuck. It's not going to go in the harbour.
I don't think anyone said that there.
I can tell you. I can tell you. We were there in force,
from
hoping
who?
we were going to get some assurance, because
that was never, and I've never understood that this was going to get rid of 100% of overflows. It was never designed to do that. And our agreement, I recollect from way back, that it would...
I beg to differ, Mr. Chairman, but...
around this table I'm talking about, Taku.
All right. Around this table? Around
this table, and what was approved by council in terms of the expenditure for this tank being just one of a number of tanks that would be in the network over the coming years.
That's foreign to me. That discussion never happened with Ngāti Toa. We wouldn't have turned up if it wasn't going to mitigate a fair chunk of it.
It is. It's going to mitigate 8 out of 10 overflows that are already occurring.
We met with Wellington
those
Water
points.
when the pipe burst along the motorway here
Yep.
for 2 weeks. And we asked the question, I hope this isn't going to happen again. And then I think further on the discussion was, no, we're going to spend some decent money on getting some holding tanks in here so that it won't occur again. So, with respect, Mr. Chairman, whether there has been information or dialogue shooting past, I don't know. But let's hope we can be a bit more clear. That's all. People will get a bit nasty on this.
Well, Mayor Baker?
I'm tentatively agreeing with you, Taku. My understanding was that was going to be working, but we still had areas around the city, like down Mana Esplanade, that needed to work. So they haven't been in place. So we might get the occasional flow there. Once that tank's working, I think there was the chance that it may overflow once or twice a year if we had a high thing, but actually it was meant to work. So I do agree with both of you.
Well, sorry. I don't. We don't want to get into this discussion here, but I think if you look back on the papers that were presented to us, it was never promised that there were 100% of the overflows would, or there would be no more overflows. All right, it was always agreed. There's no way we can engineer our way around that. I mean, if we look at it clearly, there are overflows happening, as I've said, in that area now. In areas, right? We are going to mitigate the majority of those overflows by that tank.
If then, through you, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
If that's the case, then the council for a long time has made some assurances through different chairs, through different mayors, that we're working hard to clean up that harbour. That we're going to turn it around. That one day we're going to get pippies from there again and eat from there again, as it was when we were kids. That ain't going to happen. If we've got no sort of assurances we're going to capture the whole lot. I mean, we've talked about this around this table for a few decades now, about where responsibility through, in the name of progress and development, to ensure that the harbour is turned around to its original state.
Well,
that doesn't give me any hope anyway.
Councillor Philo.
Yeah, just to back up my uncle there, I agree, and this is the first time that I've heard this when I actually read the paper. Of course, I wasn't here for the whole part of it.
You weren't here for the original.
That's right. But what I would like to know is, if this is the case that's been presented to us now, what are the options to ensure that we don't get an overflow into the harbour, so that we can, that image that Uncle Taku was just saying about, that we can start to have pipi, which is our vision, right, on our strategic priorities, that we can collect kaimoana from our harbour. What are the options so that that can be achieved?
I think that's something to look to in the long-term planning, and when Wellington Water come here and give us information about what's in that, what needs to be spent in the long-term plan, and which will go forward to the new organisation, hopefully. Yeah. Yes.
The truth of the matter is that no single solution will deliver 100%. It's a system issue, and we have maximised investment into the things that are going to make the biggest difference in the shortest amount of time. But this is a work on for a long time. We have had reasonably sophisticated discussions with Ngāti Toa, not with you, Taku, but certainly we've always tried to do that, to get the best investment, to get the best reductions in pollution into the harbour. So that is where this idea came from. It's not ideal to have a very expensive solution for overflows, but there's, the Bothamley Park wastewater pipe was going to cover the whole of the stream there, and is now only covering a portion of that stream. that is also a priority. You know, there's a whole lot of system issues that have to be fixed, and we just can't do it all at once. There's not the capacity in the market to deliver it, even if we could afford it, and we can't afford it. So it is a system issue, and we do take engineering advice to get those best solutions. But, you know, this council, ever since I've been here, has been committed to, you know, returning the harbour to health. And, you know, the riparian planting has a part to play, and our engineering solutions have a part to play. And we're hoping that entity G, you know, will, you know, we're trying to position ourselves in our harbour as a very significant priority in getting the right solutions in place to deliver that outcomes, that we can collect kaimoana back in the harbour. So none of this is perfect, you know. I think we all acknowledge none of this is great.
Mayor Baker, you want
From, well,
and then-
I agree. I agree with what you're saying. I thought we had agreed that it would be a 20-year project. It would probably take council up to 20 years to turn the harbour around with all the pipes that we have to fix. No one, and I committed to that, wants sewage in the harbour, and that this tank is just the start of it. We still have other areas in the city. You know, Ngāti Taua Domain along there is just one of them. So, and we've got other holding tanks in. I want the harbour fixed. I want it back to when you grew up and I grew up. And we've made a commitment to that, but it is time, unfortunately, Taku. It will take us 20 years, and I'd have made a commitment to that, and I stand by that.
Sorry, Councillor Johnson, then Councillor Duncan. Oh, withdrawn. Okay. Councillor Duncan.
I don't want to see the harbour return to what it was when I was growing up in Porirua. I had to swim with my teeth clenched then to just keep the stuff out of my mouth when I was swimming. So I think we've done a hell of a good job with what we've got so far. And I'd be interested to know of any place in New Zealand that has 100% safety for their harbours and their outlets. I don't think there'd be one in the world, actually.
Okay. All right. Shall we move on from that discussion? All right, Councillor Weehapi, I'll allow you.
I'm changing the subject on the subject. But I see they are doing so much work down there. But the contractors and the traffic control down there, sometimes when people are coming off that bridge going 50k and they've got to go to 100k and then they've got to stop because there's two trucks with crosses and then you've got to try and merge with the other. Can we just maybe communicate with the traffic control, whoever's doing that possibly that work is happening and maybe they need to temporarily go slow when they go in and merge with State Highway 59? Because I've seen so many near misses from that.
Through the chair, yes, I'll take that back to traffic control.
It's a good point. Weehapi. Right, let's move on. Let's move on to Kinaparu area program, where we look like we're facing even more costs. So, does anyone have any questions on the Kinaparu program? Oh, did I go again? Oh, yeah, all right. Long-term plan. Thank you for pointing that out. Any questions on the long-term plan? So that was very prescient of me, wasn't it? Okay. Kinaparu area program. Yes, questions? Councillor Duncan.
With the risk, contractors' costs are showing heavily increased costs. Mm-hmm. How much does our insistence on 15% climate change consideration add to this cost?
Through the chair, it's not just 15% for climate change, it's broader outcomes, employing locally. There's I think there's about 6 criteria, and it's only 15% of the whole overall score that you get. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Pricing is always a sort of 35% to 45% consideration. But as you noted, I mean, I don't know if it's resonated with you, but aggregate rock has gone up in price in Wellington by 95% in the last couple of months. And you go, how could that have happened? It's because quarries are not getting renewed consents in the region. And clean fill's another problem. Where do people take their clean fill? If they want to take clean fill to our landfill, they have to pay a higher rate than a clean fill, a landfill that's just for clean fill, and they're drying up. So we do have some problems at the moment.
I guess this is going to be ongoing, so we'll
through the
updated.
Through the chair, if you recall, we put Kenepuru on hold, or more or less on hold. We had a couple of 100,000 there just to wind it up because we didn't get the money from Waka Kotahi, which is we'd applied for about 16.5 million to carry on with Kenepuru projects. In late July, Waka Kotahi approved the 16.5 million, which is their 52% share of that money. So we'll be bringing a paper back to council shortly. We can't spend that amount of money now in the year, having told contractors like Downer, yes, you're engaged to do a roundabout. Now you're not. You're off doing other work. So we won't spend all of it, but we'll be coming back to try and bring some of that money forward to get going and doing some of it.
Thank you. All right, shall we move on to the Wanera to Onipoto shared pathway? So it'll be Councillor Hayward and then Councillor Duncan.
Kia ora anō. I'm struggling to understand with regards to the Stage B discussions between the agents and council. And my confusion comes from whether or not the way that we have been engaging with the agents is actually working to a structure that is defined by the courts or by council in terms of its processes. So can I get some commentary from officers about how that is structured, those conversations are structured?
Sorry, Ruben, you?
Through the chair, I can clarify that answer for you. So we did meet with the agents face to face to talk to them about what their aspirations were and what we legally could achieve. We think we've settled on terms that could potentially work. However, it is in front of the Māori Land Court, so we've had to walk them, the land agents, through the process of how to apply for funding so that the land court can appoint a lawyer for them to finalise it. So it is being done through the proper legal process now.
Thank you, Sup. So if I understand correctly, the initial process with agents is actually not necessarily a legalistic one, but one about trying to, I don't know, maintain good faith between the council and the agents and who they represent. Would that be fair to say that?
Yes, that's fair. And so one of the difficulties is that one of the requests that they have made is to lease the land to council, and there are legislative issues on whether or not we are actually legally able to do that because it's a main arterial route. So officers have gone to Greater Wellington Regional Council. We've searched for other options, examples of a main arterial route that's been leased. We haven't been able to find an option like that. Our lawyers, Simpson and Grierson, have looked into it twice now. They say they've got real concerns with that, so we may not be able to legally lease that as land, but we're open to exploring that if that was an option that we could do. So that's one of the issues that we're constrained by.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there, but I think I may have to have offline conversations about that.
Sure. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, mine related to the same part. It seems to me like that business through the Maori Land Court is going to be a cash cow for our lawyers there. They're going to do very nicely out of that. But you mentioned an alternative approach that is that what you were talking about then?
I'll do it. And through the chair. So given that the matter of the Maori land has to be determined by the court, earliest outcome for that, August 2025, something like that. So we have a consent now to do the coastal work, and we want to get on, and we've got this small area of land close to where our pathway was going to go. So there was a conversation about, can we do a temporary boardwalk and just not touch that land? So we're looking at that, getting on and doing that. So that's the alternative. And we're just exploring that with, when you say temporary apparently legally could last for 50 years, has to be very robust. But again, working in good faith, letting the agents know what we're doing and Ngāti Toa know what we're doing, seeing if that's going to work or not.
That's fantastic news to hear about a boardwalk. That's what Liz Kelly wanted in the first place, I think.
All right, shall we move on? Let's move on to the Plumerton flood-prone area response. Are there any questions? Josh, you have a question there.
Yeah, cheers. I had two questions on this one. So the first in relation to issues on the schedule. So I'm on page 83. It says here that a new project management team has been brought in to correct ongoing delays to the project and prioritise the resurrection of the previously agreed deliverables. And I guess I'm just concerned that sounds like quite dramatic language. How far gone are those agreed deliverables, and are we going to be able to get back on track?
Through the chair, you're scheduled at the moment to have a report on the 5th of October to TPK. So that's Wellington Water coming back, having reworked financials and solutions with their consultants. It was Stantec that had problems retaining staff, and then have had some problems with some of the modelling. At the moment, the council said you have a budget of about, I think from memory, 16.9 million. That's all we've put in there, all we could afford to put in the LTP. But Wellington Water's indicated that it would cost a lot more. So that conversation was about, we'll send that money towards Entity G. But Wellington Water, what bang for our buck do we get moving forward with 16.9? You don't spend it all at once. And so you'll get an update on the 5th of October.
Okay.
You got another
cool.
question?
Yeah, sorry, I had a second question as well, and that sort of begins to move into it. Actually, over the next page onto 84, just noting that the project schedule, scope of works and approved budgets unable to be approved by council in a timely manner as a result of uncertainties associated with debt serviceability and the affordable water reform. And I just wanted to clarify on that. Uncertainties around affordable water reform, is that in relation to the fact that the future of affordable water reform, there's a question mark next to it because of the general election this year? Or is that even if it progresses as it has been set out by the current government, there are still uncertainties in that situation?
Yeah, through the chair, I think it was just it's a risk category that if you think back at 30th of June and you think month by month as we're watching this thing, we've got to put some words in there to raise your awareness to the fact that we're not quite sure where we're going to end up here. We have a direction of travel at Porirua that we're trying to put as much money as possible into the three waters to signal it's a priority for this council. But in this particular area, when we started looking at it, it was a big decision to put in that $16 or $17 million, and subsequently the conversation has come back from Wellington Water that it will actually cost a lot more. And our response to that is, well, we can't afford to do it as a council. We'd like to see Entity G pick it up. Once we've got the details, we'll push it in towards Entity G, but whether that works or not, we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, and sorry, just further to that, my last question on this, the corrective action was that the project manager is going to develop a range of scenarios to allow for agile response. Are those scenarios part of the presentation that's come into TPK on 5 October, or is that more of a question for the long-term plan?
Through the chair, no, that's exactly what's, because again, we can think back to when Wellington Water workshop with us or was in a reporting stage. what bang for buck we were getting for our 16.9 or 15. There was a pump station, there was this work, there was that work, and things may have slightly changed in terms of, you'll recall with the stream that goes through, there was problems getting landowner sign off for a metre of their land. One or two didn't want to do it because they hadn't flooded. So the nature of the work has slightly changed. So we want to bring that back and make sure you're comfortable with what the way forward.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew. That's everything from me.
Okay, so we've got Mayor Baker, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Johnson. Oh, and Councillor Weehappy.
She's had her hand up, I think, before me.
Oh, did she? Oh.
Sorry about that.
You can go after him. Then.
Corrective action, where we're doing the Ely Road outlet, the beach outlet, requires clearing 2 to 3 times a week, and we've got the one just down the road on the other side of the boat club with the same sort of thing. How about we look at actually doing something once to them so we don't have to clean them what's the cost to these? It's just a horrendous trying to clean a beach thing 2 or 3 times a week. Surely Wellington Water could look at something, whether it be a guard or something that goes over these. We have to do something else, don't we?
Through the chair, I've heard this quite a number of times, and Wellington Water struggled a bit with what actually is the best technological solution. They've put wire stops and things that get blown away by the sea in bits and pieces. And so perhaps on the 5th of October, again, you bring up that comment to the technical experts that we just raise it again with them, because I do agree with you, it's a CRM at the moment, and a contractor having to go out with a spade and a wheelbarrow or whatever and trying to remove.
We'll actually bring a digger for the other one, but can you ask them to come back with costings at that meeting so that we actually have it?
Well, costings for what?
What it costs to clear those.
Yes,
so the two of them, because one's a digger and one's a man.
Yes.
All right. Is that it, Mayor Baker? Yep, okay. So Councillor Weehappy.
How far away are we from completing the discussions with iwi regarding the Hongiweka catchment study?
Through the chair, the last I was updated is we were asked to be on hold. Porirua City Council was asked to stand down and wait for the iwi and the various landowners to work between themselves. So that was what I understood. We were on hold.
Okay, so until that discussion happens and they come back to you, we obviously can't do a stream catchment study in that area, which would be pretty scary if another November rainfall event happens and we haven't been able to do that study. So who do we need to follow up, to chase up for that information?
I've got David Down taking over the project, so I can have a chat with David about if we'd like to inquire about what progress has been made and reminding some people that we are on hold and willing to do work.
Right. Councillor Duncan.
Yep, mine's the update tells us that a helicopter will be used to place and remove equipment for constructing the debris fence. Now, I'd assume, just like the Mayor was saying with the other areas having to be cleared, those debris fences will have to be cleared as well. Will a helicopter have to be used each time they need to do that?
Through the chair, no. The helicopter was, helping to put in equipment or whatever for one of the debris fences. 2 of them are gone in. I think this one's just about done too. So that's $1 million of the money that Parks was project managing. I got a figure of about $24,000 a year for Parks to get in and remove rocks from the 3 fences. There might be a bit of money for maintaining a little track to each fence. So as the rocks come down, they get caught up in the netting. You've got to have people in there lifting the rocks out, putting them on wheelbarrows, taking them out. So $24,000 per annum was the broad figure we were putting there.
So does that assume we actually get access across the property to get to those debris fences?
It does, Councillor. And again, I don't have an update on that, so we were just working with a certain person on that.
Councillor Johnson.
Look, I'm really just thinking of the James Street catchment. and wondering what the thinking is around the impact of the Plymouton Farms development when that gets underway, and if in fact that will will get provided, they will contribute funding to that, and is that something we should be thinking about now, or are you thinking about it?
Thank you, through the chair. So yes, one of the more detailed conversations that's occurring between the developer and the parties involved is how to improve the flooding alongside. So that is in train, and the respective agencies, Waka Kotahi, Kaingaora, and the developer, us and Greater Wellington, are all in the room talking about that whole area actually. So yeah.
Will we get at what stage do you? Oh, sorry. At what stage do you think we'll get an update about that?
Well, right now there's two things going on. So one is Wellington Water is looking quite intricately at the data around and the solutions to managing the water. I understand the culvert's a problem. Then obviously there's investments going to be going into the area. So there's two elements going on at the moment. Andrew's more familiar with the Wellington Water sort of modelling aspect. I'm more familiar with the what they're looking at is by way of spatial planning around there. And I guess the two things are connected, and it comes down to dollars and timing around when they will be mitigated. If you want to add anything around the flooding aspect.
Again, through the chair, Councillor Johnson, 5th of October, I don't make a difference between Cariano and James Street. They're all part of the same thing.
Yeah,
so
sure.
when Wellington Water is here, if you raise that, we did have a meeting. The officers went and met with James Street residents not so long ago. David Down was there for that and reported, for a subject where you're getting flooded. Actually, it was a reasonable meeting. But again, the problem for us is, I think it was about 19 million was the figure that was required back then. We'll get an update and just see, and that money we hadn't put into the LTP.
Cool.
Thank you. You have a
Can I
comment?
just add, we do require stormwater neutrality for these things. What we are trying to get there to is better than that, so that the existing problems are also mitigated through whatever happens on site. So we've already got problems. I mean, that roundabout, now State Highway 59 gets flooded anytime there's any significant rainfall in the catchment. So it's trying to do better with what goes in there.
I guess my thinking comes from this is a substantial project, and I'm thinking about the funding to do it. And I see we're just doing investigations and a plan at the moment around that space. So is it a possibility that funding may come through the Plymouton Farms project as an on to manage the impacts of Plymouton Farms?
They have to do their on-site work, so that's a requirement on them, and that's what our consenting people will be, testing, and Greater Wellington.
Cool. Okay, thanks.
No one else? We'll now move on to climate change program. Of course, Josh, you have a... I tried to move on. I tried not to look up, Josh.
Of course. Had to be
Feel
quick.
free to ask your questions.
I'll be quick. So mostly, first of all, just really good to see that pretty much everything is on target and ticking along as expected. My only question was around under the emissions reporting and target section on page 22. The final point there is that a climate smart LTP checklist has been developed. I'd just love to know a little bit more about that checklist.
Okay, I'll have a go. So going back into my memory banks.
Or sorry, maybe to make it easier, you could just
Can I come back?
provide it
Give you the detail.
to
Yeah,
councillors.
sure.
Yeah.
I'll
Would
get to you.
that be okay, Josh?
Yeah, that's not a problem at all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Sorry. Anything more?
No, that's everything.
Very good. Any other questions from councillors or comments? No, let's move on to the other projects. I'll take them as read. Has anybody got any comments to make on the other projects or want to ask any questions?
Mr. Chair, I'm just trying to get clarity. What do you mean by other projects?
Are you not going through?
Oh, sorry. I was going to the last page of climate response. The next one is resource recovery. Sorry for my confusion.
That's all right. Thank you for the clarity, Mr. Chair. Regarding the resource recovery network, the risk around a new resource recovery facility provided by the market, can I just get from officers a sense of where that's coming from, or is this just smoke from your nono? For those who don't speak Te Reo, your
Through
bum.
the chair, you're talking about the risk right at the bottom.
Yeah, about a commercial provider coming in to provide services.
I think what that risk is, the wording there is to alert you. Porirua City Council officers work away with you on, yes, we'd like a C&D facility, we'd like an organics facility, we'd like community resource recovery park. And we sort of think, C&D at the landfill, but organics somewhere else. But as we're having those conversations, commercial providers are having their own conversations and other councils are having conversations. We tend to be pretty well linked in with other councils. Wellington wants to do their own thing or not, they sort of come in and join with us at times. And so it's just to alert you that we've got to be cognisant that things can happen, and with the big people, the waste managements, the Enviro Wastes, they are linked into MFE and the government knowing something has to happen in this space. They may open something which would change our plans.
Okay. Just a comment on that. It was actually a question. Can officers perhaps again review these documents to give a little bit more commentary about the degree of risk that these issues represent? Because it may seem from your response, from the way I understand it, is that this is more of a general risk that could occur, not an acute or one of significance to council. So I think just a little bit more clarity around that. Kia ora.
Yeah, you could say it might not be a risk at all if a private contractor wants to do it.
Mr. Chair, just the point that they do have colour categories at the start that talk about the overall level of risk, and so I take that as a guide, but at the same time, I think just a little bit more expansion on it would probably just resolve these issues.
Any other comments on this resource recovery network? If not, let's move on to Whitford Brown to Parimata Kōrero program. Anyone want to make any comments on this? A question. Okay, all right. We'll look forward to progress with bated breath. Okay. That moves us to, I suspect, I'll just make sure I haven't flicked through the other one, the broader outcomes review, which you will note there. Councillor Hayward, you have a comment or some comments or a question?
Kia ora, hia mana anō. My question is, thank you. I'll preface by saying thank you to officers for producing this material. It is extremely useful to see how the committee is working in practice and showing the working. I think this is the kind of level of detail that I was looking for. Also, shout out to Kaiser and the scrub cutters for their mahi as well. Can officers give some clarity as to this being a part of regular reporting, or is this a one-off type request?
Through the chair, more than happy. We could do an update every 6 months or every 12 months if you would find that beneficial.
I would, but I'll leave it to officers as to figure out what is the most appropriate time window, so long as it's the regularities, I think, the important thing in terms of a snapshot. Mr. Chair, one comment on this. I did point out to Kaiser and the scrub cutters, I would just like to point out to officers that although tremendous work has been done on those broader outcomes and adhering to them as part of the scoring process, it does make me wonder in terms of local social procurement, local procurement of local firms is not necessarily reflected in a lot of the decisions that are being made here. I don't know if that's because of the nature of each of the applications, which I don't want to go and litigate every single one of them. That's your job. But I just think that might be my reading of this seems to suggest that it's something that I'm noticing in the reports.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Certainly, Councillor Puna.
I'm curious around if there's anything in the procurement around subcontractors for like local companies or auxiliary services that the big tenders might need, scaffolding, traffic management, catering. If they could, something there that says if you subcontract and you need these auxiliary, that so much percentage needs to be local. Is there anything like that in the procurement tender process?
Through the chair. So we do ask about what's going to be contributed to the local economy. So the main supplier is not locally based, then they would then be required to tell us whether they're using any local subcontractors. So if they can comment on that in their response to the tender, then that aids in the scoring for the broader outcomes category.
So is that part of the criteria and the weighting as well?
Yes.
Oh, good.
There's
Okay.
not a fixed weighting
There's not.
on that category. So broader outcomes includes the sustainability, reduced greenhouse gas emissions, local providers, training, employment opportunities, so it covers all of that. The 15% covers all of that, so it's what they can talk to us about in their response as to what they can contribute in those areas.
And so the other 85%, is that more price, costing, reputation? What else is that?
Through the chair, experience, qualifications, you get a lot of points for that. So if you're going to try and tender for road maintenance, we want an experienced road maintenance contractor. Methodology is really important, design. So if you think you're trying to win work, depends on the amount, even if you're a small contractor, you want some work with parks and you're bidding for it, you're told these are the criteria. So if you're sitting there and you can get up to 15 points in the broader outcomes area, and one of those is employing local, and you're going to use a couple of subcontractors who are local electricians or local you'll be saying that, and cha-ching, cha-ching, you'll have a couple of points to your advantage, and you may win the tender through that. Yeah. But as to Councillor Duncan's question earlier, I'm always, about 35% to 40%. I'm after, I think as a council we should be after price, because ratepayers want good value for money.
I think that is important, but I also believe that the main people who are motivated to do the job right are the ones who live here. So, I think it's quite important to have the local, maybe even a higher percentage. I don't know.
I think that's a discussion for another time. We can have the kōrero, but I'm with Andrew. Councillor Johnson. Yeah.
I just think on that note, looking at Kai's article and his process, what impressed me about this was that Kaiser decided he wanted to put in a tender, and he went to community groups and worked through the process in the community he was working in. And it was quite I think that was a story that's worth sharing amongst the community, because it was he utilised his existing community networks and was able to achieve that. We've regularly discussed the process and around doing tenders to council and what it means, and so I think it's a real celebration that here's a small business that went through the process, learned it as they went, and was successful in their tender.
Noted. All right. I'm now going to put the motion that the project report be received. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you very much, Lynn, and others, the actors, players. Now it moves us to item 7.3, which is the finance report. Can I ask Elizabeth to come to the table, because no doubt I'm going to move the report to open it for discussion. Thank you very much. Councillor Hayward, seconded. Elizabeth, is there anything you want to say before we open it for questions, in terms of the key factors which have influenced the overall results.
Sure. So then I just have a few things to note and to provide a snapshot summary. So just please note that the presented results are for the 12 months ended the 30th June 2023. And then these aren't the final results. So finance are working through the external audit, and as a result, changes may arise. So there are no known changes at this time. So then in terms of a snapshot summary, the net surplus, which is the revenue less the costs of 14 million, is behind budget by 16 million. So then in the statement of comprehensive income expenses, this is primarily due to the exceptional items. So the exceptional items are the development contributions and vested assets, which are 9.3 million below budget, and this is reflective of a slowdown in growth. There is also the gain on sale of assets, which is 2 million below budget. So when originally budgeted, it was budgeted for the sale of 3 properties. We have only sold 1 in the financial year. And the other exceptional item is software as a service, which we've talked about throughout the year. There is a 1.2 million spend, but there is no budget. So excluding these exceptional items, the variance between budget and actuals is smaller. So excluding the exceptional items, if we're looking at revenue is under budget by 6%, and expenses are under budget by 5%. I'm happy to take questions.
So, questions, councillors. It's probably better than expected, but yeah, Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks for that report. It was great. Just something intrigued me is in the discussion item 2, the table there, the net surpluses, why are each of those columns $1,000 out?
That will just be due to rounding.
Is it?
Yeah.
Really?
Because of large numbers.
Interesting. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm sure the actual financial results will be accurate. Yes, Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora, kia mana. He pātai, I guess looking through these documents, especially around the infrastructure sections, there's a lot of non-CapEx components in the activity reports. Is there a way that council can, perhaps have versions of that document that, don't show that, because there's still a large amount of waka kotahi subsidies and so forth that aren't going to come in, and that does affect, from a layperson reading that, going, well, it looks like we're spending a tremendously low amount in transport and water infrastructure, when it's actually about those are new projects. And so I'm just trying to, again, want to give clarity to the community, particularly around renewals and repairs, that we aren't underspending in those particular spaces.
Isn't that when the financials go out and we need to put a story around that and make it clear that those things, or as clear as possible to the public?
I guess the point I'd make, Mr. Chair, in response to that is that the graphs that show in support of that would need a very good explanation, because there are significant variances, but they are explainable by by CapEx related delays and so forth. So it is understandable, but a person looking at that graph, and graphs are used to give a very quick a guide to people who aren't that clever with the numbers or the words, to see where we are in general.
Through the chair, I have sympathies for Councillor Hayward. I suffer from the same. I have to work pretty hard to understand the financials, and when they're skewed by vested assets or DCs in a big way, and transport and some projects slow. But I guess it's a work in progress for us as Datascape is put into place, and in these sort of reports we can try and give you a slightly bit more narrative in terms of maintenance money is being spent on the roads as per budget. It's just some of the capital ones that things haven't quite happened. So we'll have a look at that, a work in progress.
Thank you for your understanding. Another pātai. with regards to CapEx, in the summary talking about that capital expenditure was budgeted at 100%, but only cash flow and debt funded at 70%. So does that mean then that there's also less of an impact on our overall debt position at the year end as well, and thereby allowing us a little bit more headroom in our ability to borrow?
Okay, yeah, sorry, I'm not sure if I've got the question quite right. We have a plan with a high level of CapEx in it, 180,000 this year, but we're only financed to borrow 70% of that. So you work out what that is, say 125,000 or something of CapEx, and then you go, we're going to spend 125 CapEx when last year we spent 70. Best will in the world, I'll bet we'll be gunning for 100. If we can get over 100, fantastic. So that's the way it sort of works. And then, but if you said to yourselves and officers, well, you shouldn't have 180, what are you going to remove? You get into trouble because no one wants to give up anything. So that's the game that we're playing at the moment post-COVID. We did pretty well with 70-something million last year. We'll want to try and have it higher given we've got some big projects. You've just done a special projects report that says we're giving 11 million to Te Ranga for the Bothamley Park sewer. Shortly there's some money going out in the CapEx space. But
I think your question was around headroom, wasn't it? And I mean, my short answer to that as a lay person would be no. And headroom is about, you might have some headroom, but it's a matter of, can you afford it to pay for it? And I think that's the key question. What impact does that have on rates, even if you've got headroom that you might want to spend on other projects? No. Any other questions? If not, I'll move that the finance report be received. All those in favour? Those against, carried. Thank you very much. Right. That moves us to item 7.4, which is the council transport bylaw. Yes, please come, Galsha. It's, sorry you've had to wait so long. Should have realised and moved you forward because we always go on about projects. And in a nice way, I mean that, positively. There's a lot of meat in there. I'm going to move this report. Thank you very much, Councillor Waddle. Yes, opening for questions, and first question is Councillor Weehapi.
Thank you. Just in regards to the Mana Esplanade service lane, that's absolute common sense. I actually didn't realise it wasn't a one-way street, although I have driven it down there both ways, just because, you know, sometimes trying to get a Subway lunch on a Friday and there's no park is... Anyway, just going through to page 106 in the picture, where you've got that marked with the yellow lines there, is that going to be permanently put there? Because I thought that park was owned privately. That car park area was owned privately, but so, maybe not that part.
No, so the one way we have marked, so that's actually PCC's land, so Porirua's land. So,
okay.
So that little bit.
Yep, so what I'm asking you is the yellow box with lines through it, is that indicative of a no parking spot that's going to be put there? And have you spoken to the owners of that car park about that? I know it's not a park, people park there anyway, but I'm just asking with the yellow lines because we've historically put yellow lines in without telling anyone and it's caused a lot of issues. So my question is that indicative of what you will be doing in that immediate area? And yes. Have you spoken to the
occupier?
The owners of the...
So when we actually consulted, so we actually gave the whole picture, and that indicative marking is also being consulted, and that is what is going to reflect as a work. Yeah.
Okay. My only concern is that there was one business that was the one that said, I don't know whether that's a supply room or whatever, that said, hey, this is what's happening, all good. My only concern is that if you've spoken to one business and perhaps, you know, there's no communication between all the business owners and or the people who own that public car park, and we go and put yellow lines in there, that it might cause a little bit of a stir. That's my only issue there, because I can tell you right now, it will. I know the owners of those businesses.
So the usual part of consultation is we just pick up the actual property owners and we actually consult with them. So the whole land is owned by one property owner. So that's why we send out the consultation letter. But in this case, I will need to check if direct business owners, the business operators, have been consulted. So which might not be the case.
Yeah, no. I know what you mean, and I understand. I read the papers. I do understand that you sent it out and have given everyone an opportunity, and there was one private property that came. Totally understand that, but I think if we're going to draw yellow lines on a car park, that we probably should just maybe follow up before we do that. That's all.
So, what are you asking, Councillor Weehapi? Should we remove this from what we're potentially going to agree? Or
Through the
sorry, go
chair,
on.
we're happy as officers to make a personal visit to the businesses and let
Great.
them know in advance that this will be going forward.
But that's still going to cause problems, though, isn't it?
Well, at least they'll be
Councillor Weehapi.
informed.
It is better than just painting yellow lines, isn't it?
Well, it's used as a car park already. I don't disagree, but it was your points that people are going to be... Okay. All right. That's thank you for that. So you'll go and talk... Officers will go and talk to the business operators there. Yeah, Councillor Hayward.
This is a quick question, but it's related to the previous line of questioning. Can officers just take a moment to reflect on what has just happened in terms of future engagement with potential stakeholders around these types of changes? And that perhaps officers should consider that consultation is not merely, as it has turned out in this instance, letting them know that we've already made the decision and this is going to happen. That is not consultation, and I think that we need to be mindful of that in terms of improving our practices when engaging with the community.
It is consultation with the landowner. How wide does it go?
The problem is the landowner doesn't own the business.
No, I completely agree. That's fine. We're noting this anyway. Thank you. I mean, I think it's important points. Is there any other discussion to be had? Oh, Josh. Sorry, Josh.
Yes, thanks, Ross. Just in relation to the time-restricted parking on Queen's Avenue, I said two questions. So the first was I noted in the discussion that this is going ahead now because the car parks in Plymouth Domain and Douglas Close have been returned for commuter use. So I was just interested in what the net impact on total car parks available to commuters would be there in terms of the ones that have opened back up versus the ones that would potentially be lost here. I've got another question as well, but I'll ask that first.
Do you know much about? So the net impact, we haven't assessed. So the history with the development is that this specific time-restricted car park was brought to the TPK meeting before, and at that time it was deemed not to go ahead because the development was not there. So right now the development is about to finish. So that's why we have progressed with the time-restricted parking.
Okay, I see. So I guess what I'm looking for is just to make sure we've got confidence that we have sufficient total parking capacity for commuters to make sure that people are still able to access the train.
So along the Stein Ave, so there is a lot of unrestricted car parks, and I see that there was one submitter who opposed the view, saying that there is not a lot of car parks on the Stein Avenue in front of businesses. But when you look at the Stein Avenue, there is a lot of unrestricted car parks. So there is confidence that there is ample amount of car parks.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And the only other thing was just to check whether do we anticipate that there will be that this will be straightforward enough from a compliance perspective. I'm just thinking this is sort of quite out of the way from where a number of other time-restricted car parks are. Do we have confidence that we'll be able to make sure that people are only using this for 2 hours?
Through the chair, I can answer that. So the parking enforcement team go out to the suburbs on a daily basis, but they move around which suburbs they go to. So we will probably have to go and visit Plimmerton a bit more often when it first gets implemented. That's usually the way until people get used to it, and then it's part of our route around checking different locations.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, that's everything from me.
All right. So if there being no other... Oh, sorry.
I just want to support Councillor Trillin's push there to have lots of car parks. I think good on him.
Just lots of access to the trains, Mike.
Oh, people can walk, Josh. There were a lot of smiles around the table when you were saying. Okay, I'm now going to move the recommendations of the Porirua City Council Transport Bylaw. All those in favour? Aye. Great. Those again? Carried. Thank you very much. So this now brings us to a close of TPK. We're going to have the closing karakia at the end of the workshop, please note.
This brings
We're
us
going to
to
have morning tea right